I've coached a bunch of kids that like immediately, like I see him across the field, I'm like, yeah, that kid's a stud, right? And it's amazing because some of these other sports take over
Yeah, they do.
nowadays, and like realize no one played lacrosse 10 years ago,
Right.
and now all of them are playing. So that those numbers are kind of weird. But I would say soccer in general seems like it would be on the rise, but I think it's actually the opposite.
I'm gonna grab something real quick. Hold on. You get it because you said it.
Yeah.
Do you know the Men in Blazers from
Men in
NBC
Blazers,
Sports?
the guy to sit there and do a color commentary.
Yeah, but like just making fun of everything, make jokes about all
Yeah,
the stuff that's happening, right?
yeah.
So this is their book. It's the Encyclopedia Blazer Tanica. The subtitle,
Blazer Tanica?
yeah, Blazer Tanica, because of the Men in Blazers, right? So here's the subtitle of their book: A Suboptimal Guide to Soccer, America's Sport of the Future since 1972. Actually, really haven't watched too much. This year I've more so with sports beyond soccer. I've been watching, like, as soon as the NFL playoffs hit, I was like, I'm going to watch the last 5 minutes of every game, and I was highly entertained.
Did you get up at 6 a.m. and watch Liverpool today?
Yeah. Well, I started the game, and then I went to the gym, because I usually go around like 7 on Saturdays and Sundays.
You went to the gym? What's that?
Yeah, I know, right? It's this guy I know who makes sandwiches.
Yeah, let's say, what does the gym do for you? Does he make breakfast tacos or something?
Yeah.
I went to gyms.
No, I'll wake up for every game. I mean, Ezra usually wakes up at 6:30 anyway, so like.
Yeah, I figured you're up. I just like when I see the games, when it's the 7:30 kickoff.
Yeah.
A lot of time their games are like that 10:30 because they're on TV a lot, so it's like. But this time I was like, I woke up, I rolled over, I'm like, wow, Liverpool game done.
Yeah.
The team they put out today, I was looking at, I was like, well, I know they're resting all the guys from 2 and 3 World Cup games in the last 2 weeks, but I was like sitting there thinking, are they gonna mess around and like tie a game like this?
What's weird is out of nowhere, Liverpool suddenly has depth. Like, it's taken a couple years of like, man, they just don't have the squad depth.
They always had depth. It just didn't feel like it.
It didn't feel like it. Yeah, it didn't feel like it because it was just such a massive drop from the top talent.
Well, the thing that and I'll call it an embarrassment of riches, right? So
yeah,
back, and I'll call it throughout the 2000s when Barcelona was so good, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is if you ever saw Barcelona play when they didn't play like those 3 or 4 key guys in the middle, they weren't that good. Iniesta.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Xavi.
Like, that midfield with Messi. Like when they played, when they had that team, they were just unstoppable. Like you couldn't touch the ball. They were so good, so solid. But then I'd catch them another time, like on a second leg of like a Spanish Copa or something. And I'm like, this team sucks.
Yeah. And
they would tie like a Getafe or something. And I'm like, who the hell is this team? And then 2 days later, they would play their first team and win 5-0 against Real Madrid or something. And I'm like, what the hell? But the reason is that those teams, Real Madrid, Barcelona, they literally will bankrupt the country in order to buy players, right?
Yep.
So they just have like a starting 11 with like a sub or 2. Yep. Even their backup goalies sometimes will be dodgy as hell.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be like a 20-year-old guy that played for like a 3rd division team the year before.
And that's what you see in like a lot of the countries, like Spain and France especially are like that. Germany's weird just because all Bayern does is they just buy whoever the best player is of their rivals team.
Yeah.
Like somebody like, oh man, Dortmund's been way too good this year. That Lewandowski needs to come over here, and then they just buy him, and then
Hey, here, watch next year. You everyone's thinking that I don't know, the Norwegian, the big blondie,
Erling Haaland.
Holland, right? Everybody's thinking, he's going to Man City. Watch, he's going to go to Bayern Munich.
Yeah, right. Right, man. I would hope so. I don't want to see him at City. Like City is the team that's like changed.
He doesn't match that team
system.
Style.
He doesn't. Well, that's the problem. Is lately they haven't been buying for their style. They've just been buying for skill, and that's why like Grealish hasn't fit in because he doesn't fit the style they play.
Well, the other issue is that they basically play. It's the bar. He's the Barcelona guy, right? So
Yeah,
they play 9 out of 11 players are a midfielder. Okay,
right.
so their thing is tic tac, tic tac, tic tac,
Yep,
tic tac, tic tac, and they end up scoring the most easy goal you ever seen. But the reality is they're just playing like 3-on-1, like
yeah.
you know,
They're just passing the
drills.
ball until they have a
They're
tap
playing
in.
rondo. Rondo's the
Yeah,
drill, like you get in a box. That's what
yeah,
they're playing. Even
yeah.
with their goalie's a field player. Like everyone's
Mhm.
a field player. And
Yeah,
then when they ever run up against someone that really stops them, like Munich has done a few times when they stopped Barcelona, and they just dominated them defensively,
mhm.
primarily because they were able to man up with their midfielders
Yeah,
and just kind of cut out all those passes and didn't give me any time.
yeah, and then
People that sit back and
they
let
don't
them
know
just
what to do
they
when
well
those
people
games.
sit back and go, hey, which is probably the right move. Is like we're going to let them ticky tack us to death and then
Mhm.
counter.
Yep,
But the problem is jogging around and following those dudes for 45 minutes. You're done. Like
yeah.
you're
They
not even
cover
really
so much
chasing the ball.
ground.
You're
Yeah,
just you're just you're just like playing like shadow boxing,
yeah,
and they're not really using that much energy. It looks like they are, but they're really not because they have
yeah,
the ball.
yeah.
You never get tired on offense. You get tired on defense.
Says the defender.
Correct. Every time I move up on offense, I'm like, this is an easy position. This is great. Because after you on offense, half those guys they lose the ball, they stop running right away. Look at like Ronaldo. He hadn't played defense in 20 years. That's why he's still playing.
Right. Yeah.
You
Because
know?
he just he sprints forward and then he walks
Right.
back until he's on side again, and then
Right, right,
he
right. Well, that's how you keep playing for 20 years, to your
Mhm.
point, right? Like you're just
Yeah. Okay.
doing
Well,
cool.
I mean, we've already started, so it doesn't really matter at this point. I don't even need to do any sort of introduction. This is great. So I wrote down a few questions just to
Yeah.
put it here, but generally the idea here is just to go through your history a bit because
Yeah.
I know some of it, but I
Yeah.
know it through like stories from mom,
Because you're
and
so
then
much younger, right? So much younger when we were.
right, and then even when I remember, like I went and saw you play at like Lynn.
Yeah.
But there are stories I heard from mom, like, later on or, like, an off comment, and I was like, "Wait, did that happen?" And I just don't know,
Right.
because I was so young at that time too. Um, first off, preferred name, soccer, football, a little bit of footy, or as my friends call it, kickball?
Kick. No. It's it was always soccer to me.
Yeah.
Now,
Um,
I grew up in dumb America, so it was a football. Actually, I would say it differently. I grew up in
football?
Texas where football was football, right?
Yeah. Yeah, football's
So
football.
football's football. So there was no chance of me calling it that, even though better than 50% of every team I ever played on
Mhm.
was Hispanic,
Yeah.
right? So it was football, right? To them when they're
Mhm.
speaking Spanish, but I would say that in general it was always soccer because to me football was, you know,
Football.
Cowboys, whatever,
Yeah.
normal. Friday
Right.
Night Lights. Friday Night Lights, baby.
And then we just talked for 20 minutes about the professional game and professionals, world class internationals.
Right.
Do you like follow anything in particular? Or you just kind of like absorb it all?
I you mean like have a team kind of thing?
Yeah. Or even like a main league that you follow.
So no. So mainly because it's more it's I certainly don't follow MLS. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's mainly more because of the way it's available on TV. It's always been Premier League.
Yeah.
Um but it was Premier League was available when I was in college. We used to
Hmm.
go get we used to go and get pay per view. Somebody we chip in money, right? Nickels, right? So
Hmm.
someone to get pay per view back then. It may have been $19 or something to watch an FA Cup final or
Right.
so. Or we go to the bar like to an Irish pub or something to find it with the guys because when I was in college it was 5 Americans and you know 18 or 15 internationals.
Internationals. Yeah.
So like to them it was like they're looking for a way to watch it, watch the game. And so
Hmm.
I would say that when I was a kid, professional game didn't exist, right, in America. So
Yeah.
it was more of I don't think I was really exposed to professional. watching the professional game um, until college more. I watched a little bit, like you said, you catch a game here and there. Certainly the
Mhm.
World Cup games, but that's every
Yeah.
4 years. So it was more like back then. I remember looking in magazines, like like the 442 kind of magazine,
Right, right.
right?
Yeah.
But back then, like you couldn't get that, but you had like Soccer America or whatever these magazines
Mhm.
that existed, and that's where you'd see it, right? You'd be like, oh, or the front page of some like soccer catalog that was selling shoes, and you're like, who's that? And it'd be Baggio from Italy or someone like that.
Yeah.
That was from like the 80s or 90s. Maradona for sure, right?
Yeah.
Who was world famous. So those kind of things, and it was. But no, I never really followed a team in particular. When I went to, I would say that the '94 World Cup, which is right when I was a senior in high school, right?
Which
So
was in the United
it
States.
was in the US. So the '94 World Cup was huge for that. And the build up to it was huge because one, you're a teenager, right? You're
Mhm.
you're not 10. When you're 10, none of that stuff comes into play. Um, but the '94 World Cup was huge, and we could go into Dallas and seeing games and stuff was possible, right? Because they played in
Yeah.
the Cotton Bowl. They played a couple games of the Cotton Bowl, so it was like, okay, now it's neat. So that was Klinsmann, Germany, right? That was that time frame.
Yeah.
So you learned the names, right? Klinsmann and what was the Bulgarian's name? Stoichkov or something?
Mhm.
Hristo Stoichkov. These ridiculous talents and that were out there, right? That you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, who are these guys?
The
Those guys
Colombian who
were.
I can never remember his name, I just remember his giant
Oh,
afro.
Hagita was the goalie, but Valderrama. I
Valderrama,
ended up
yeah.
playing against him later when he
Oh,
was in the
really?
MLS. Yeah. So we would they trained in South Florida, and so we
Mhm.
would play like friendlies against all the MLS teams that trained in South Florida back
That's
then.
awesome.
But yeah, so that World Cup was really kind of an eye opener um, when I got to school and I was surrounded by all the internationals. Right, that's all they wanted because you realize those places bar across. I mean, I remember going my first day and preseason, right? We're there like the beginning of August or something. School doesn't start for another month or 3.5
Mhm.
weeks, and you're kind of there, just your team, the girls' team is staying in some other dorm somewhere, and you're just practicing twice a day. But I
Yeah.
remember going in, and it was we'll call it 6 or 7 South Africans, uh, 3 or 4 English guys, 3 or 4 Swedish guys. Uh, I don't know, just stuff like that, and realize none of those places have anything other than one sport.
Right.
Okay, South Africa has rugby,
Mhm.
but so they're pretty passionate about rugby, but everywhere else it's just soccer, right? That's
Yeah.
all, football. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of like they always were interested, and all of them, believe me, had a team, right?
Mhm.
And so it was funny. People that were South African were English fans, right? English soccer
Mhm.
fans,
Yeah.
because that was one. England was controlling that place for 100 years, but um, they had several of them were big like Man U fans, and
Mhm.
others were obscure team fans, which was really fun.
Yeah.
So like one of the guys was like a fan of like Charlton Athletic,
Right.
and they're in the Premier League, getting like 15th place, but would always be like a spoiler because they were like not terrible,
Yeah.
but they would like somehow win a game against like back then Newcastle or somebody,
Right.
and it was just a huge day for that guy.
Well, the thing I like about one of the reasons in particular I've really been drawn to just watching soccer, more so than most other sports as I've gotten older is that right there. The whole it's a low scoring game. And so if a team who should not win can hold out defensively long enough, they will get at least one opportunity in a
Oh
game.
yeah,
And if
oh
they
yeah,
can poach a goal and upsets happen today, Brentford beat Chelsea 4-1.
yeah. That's not holding out. That's not holding defensively. That's smashing somebody.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, like, Brentford should not have won that game, and they came out like, Brentford's, like, in relegation
Yeah,
battle.
they look top five, not bottom five.
Right, plus the whole relegation thing of if your team sucks, you don't get to be in this league anymore. Like, that is such a
I
great,
think
like,
all American
system.
sports should go to that. Forget draft picks. You're out.
Yeah,
You're out.
exactly.
If you, and it's funny how far they'll fall, right? Because what happens is, and you can pull up the tables, right, for like the championship league and
Mhm.
second division, all that stuff.
Yeah.
There are teams that you'll go, oh my God, they were in the Premier League like yesterday. and they're
Yeah.
down in like the third division because
Yeah, or yeah.
it's that they may have got relegated, but those players that were decent on their team are still in the Premier League, or
Mhm.
maybe they're in the Championship. But they're down like two divisions now. Like they'll like a
Right.
Derby County or something, right? They get relegated last year. Well, hell, they'll get relegated again.
Well, think about Leeds. Like Leeds was a or Nottingham Forest. They were top teams in the 80s and 90s, like
Yeah.
like winning
Yep.
titles. They were
Where's
on the
Sunderland?
international
Is
stage.
Sunderland in the second
Yeah.
division now or first?
Sunderland might be in first
Yeah, but
division.
like those kind of things are hilarious, right? They're like
Yeah.
they just drop. But the other side, that's what kind of goes back earlier when you said something about just buying the players, right? Like they
Mhm.
can't go out and buy, you know, world class players. They can try to find
Right.
them, but they're going to be
Mhm.
like offshoots that just, they're like people that are basically getting cut, traded, free transfers, and
Right.
they happen to get someone that can get them there. Plus the combination of good young talent, and
Mhm.
it just happens to work out every once in a while.
It does. So anyway, back to you. Uh we talked about college a little bit. I want to talk about before that. So
Yeah, yeah.
I always think of you as like objectively, you are by far the best athlete in the family because you have the records to prove it. Like, like
Like
I
there's
oh,
actual stats. There's
right,
stats out there as a
right.
youth player. Yeah,
Like we can go find all of it, right? Like your history through it all.
right.
And I always say that because I would think if I said like, man, Dustin's the best like soccer player, Jordan would be like, man, I'm probably better than him. I'm like, yeah, but we don't have the records for that. Like
Right, right, right.
we can't. So objectively, Dustin is absolutely the best
I
of the
would say
family.
I would say that you know, as you know, we're all so far apart in age. It was just hard to kind of
Hmm.
pay attention to people's what they were doing then.
Yeah.
But as a youth player, um, I certainly was, I would say, more successful
Yeah.
than anybody else as a
Yeah.
young kid.
Yeah.
Playing and scoring. I mean, you see, your mom still got those articles and stuff where I've got, you know, 40 goals in 8 games or whatever.
Right.
Like,
And
and
like
they're
the
like
under
from the
tens
from
or
the
whatever.
small town newspaper, and really, what that as an older guy, as a with more wisdom of my age, I realized I was playing against crap talent, right? But
Yeah.
but the reality is that I was also dominating. Right? It's
Well,
like
and it's also the thing of like you also understood the game.
right, exactly, and
Like
people
so
didn't.
many kids go and play and they just don't really get soccer,
And
but then you see
here's
the
how
kids
it
who do
kind
and
of
you're like,
works
"Oh,
out.
okay."
Here's how it worked out as a kid. So, and guy, you were born in Austin, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had an entire, you know, lifetime basically of playing before we even moved to Austin.
Mhm.
So I started at, probably 3 years.
Who'd you play for in Dallas? Because it was a big
So
club,
I
right?
played for a lot of teams, and so uh, we lived in Grand Prairie, right? And so we played at. I started playing. I think I had an old jacket. Mom keeps all this stuff. There was an old jacket with patches all over it, right? You ever see those
Mhm.
patches?
Yeah.
They're like spring 1980 and all this kind of stuff. Well, one of them. So I'm born in '76, right? So I looked at it. I'm like, wait, how did I play in the fall of '79 or whatever, or spring of '79?
Yeah.
I'm 3 years old, right? But it was like, and it was pee wee ball, right? But back then it was so funny. They probably put us on a full field because no one knew anything and just
Right.
let us run like maniacs, right? So now they play like 3-on-3 and small goals and all that. But back then it was totally different. But and I'm sitting there going, well, so I started playing at like 3 years old ish in Grand Prairie and did recreational stuff. There was no such thing as travel soccer and all that stuff back then. And so we played recreational, but really we played every sport, right? We played baseball in the summer,
Mhm.
the late spring, summer. We played soccer fall and spring. We played basketball in the winter. We played year-round sports. I mean,
Yeah.
if anything, I would say soccer wasn't even my sport for the longest time.
Really?
Yeah, no, because it was every sport was the sport, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a thing where mom there's an article or something in the on one of the things that mom has where I played like I used to despise baseball. We played it all the time, but I was so bored
Mhm.
because baseball is just slow, right? So when you play like center field in little league, right, when you're like 12 or whatever that is, little
Right.
league age, I mean, it was just boring to me. Like I could catch, I could run, I could hit, whatever. But it just wasn't for me. But she has some article where I batted 1,000 for the year, not in t-ball. It was little league. So that means I either walked
Yeah,
or probably got an infield hit and legged it out because I could run, or I
yeah.
just blooped one over the infielders' heads and I was on base. But I batted 1,000 for an entire season, and I think I quit this. I think I quit that year. So now we were young, right? 12 or whatever. But
Right.
the reality is I just didn't like it. But everyone played.
Mhm,
It was more of a community effort, right? Everyone played soccer in the spring, everyone played basketball, everyone played soccer in the fall, whatever. Everyone played baseball. So you kind of it was like you had like a little rivalry, right? And you played with the same teams. Like now it's funny because we do drafts and all this stuff even at the community level, which is crazy,
that is
because we're
crazy.
but the reality is they're doing it out of an interest of fairness.
Right,
Back then, Ryan, you would just go create a team with your son and your neighbors or whatever, and I would go create a team where we just go smash each other, right?
right.
And that's what happened. So you end up having two teams that were like dominant, and then a bunch of teams that were terrible. And so that's how it worked. And so, like, I played with the same team forever. We had the same team name. It was like basically an all-star team, and we had
Mhm,
some players that weren't as good, but they probably had a thing where they could keep like 10 players, and they would
yeah,
add on other signups, from the kind of like the YMCA, right?
right.
But I played with the same core of 10 players for a decade,
Yeah,
and then that same core of players ended up being a travel team
mhm,
later. Almost that same core, 8 or 10 guys ended up playing together on the first travel teams we played on in Dallas. And then we played in like you probably start in like a lower level, like a second division league, right? In the Premier League or the travel league. And then we moved up to like the Premier League out of like Plano because we
mhm,
won the other league. It was kind of
right,
like the relegation, right? And we moved up
right.
and played in the top division and went up there. And I remember, and even Dad can tell you this. I mean, we got smacked when we first moved up, right? It's like a learning curve. Like you go up there and all of a sudden like, oh, these guys are different, right? They've been
Right.
playing together a long time, but they're also playing the game, right? As you said earlier, like, they're playing the game better
Mhm.
than we were playing the game. So it
Right.
took a while to catch up. But then what happens? You asked me what clubs I played for. So they started a club called Texas Elite, I
Mhm.
think is what it was called, in north in Grand Prairie area, and it was basically all kind of like an all-star team of all these recreational kids from North and South Grand Prairie. And then they had other kids from the surrounding areas, but certainly no one from very far away. And then what happened is that I started getting requests to play in tournaments, like as a guest player
Mhm.
for other teams that were in our leagues that were good teams.
Right.
Like, hey, you want to play for us at the Thanksgiving Day Invitational in Houston or whatever.
Mhm.
And so I used to go and play and guest play for. There was a team called the Cosmos, but they were like, let's say they were like a top one or two team, and we
Yeah.
were like mid-table, right?
Right.
And they were like top one or two, and there was a lot of clubs back then that probably don't even exist now. They've all really been merged into like a money factory for all these travel teams now. But
Yeah. They are.
um, but now, there was no such thing as FC Dallas and all that. That's really a conglomeration of probably 20 teams.
Mhm.
They probably have 100 youth teams. Well,
Yeah.
there's no reason for them to have 100 youth teams. They really have fields all over the Metroplex.
I mean, even here in Dallas, Arsenal has a youth team.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. But like,
Yeah,
but even
like,
like,
they just all those clubs have
right,
massive
they've got
branches
sponsors,
everywhere. Yeah.
partnerships, and everything. So, but back then there was a team um, called the Longhorns,
Mhm.
which was a very top end club. And I guess, played with them on tournaments
Yeah.
before. They were based out of like North Dallas, Plano area. They basically became like FC Dallas, right? Like over
Yeah.
time, like that's that area. Um,
I think
and
that's the team I thought you had played for, because I
yeah,
remember a few years, like, I was probably, like, junior, senior in high school, I was watching that team play the US men's national team, like, under 21s or whatever in a tournament, and mom walked by, and was like, "Oh, Dustin played for them." Like, I was like, "What?"
in like what, like the Dallas Cup or something.
It was like, no, it was like a like, Disney Invitational, they were playing in Orlando.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So they certainly teams like that. So like there was a team called the Longhorns. there was a lot of teams like Genesis or Andromeda, all kinds of different names.
I didn't realize that you like jumped around as a guest player. I thought you were just always with like
Well,
the
I
one
was
club.
well, I did, but what happened was, and the reality is that at that time there, I probably was having some success or whatever in certain position that I played, and um, and that was like an advantage. You could have like one or two guest players or whatever in a
Hmm.
tournament. So why would you not try to get better?
Right.
That was certainly probably better. I mean, I would go guest play and start for their
Hmm.
team, which had to make their own players pissed off if you think about it.
And you
But
did you always play like center defense?
no, that's what I was going to say. So as a kid, basically everyone's an attacker, right? Because you're just the
Hmm.
only one that's figured it out yet.
Yeah.
So you can dribble around everybody because they're kind of playing a different game and don't realize that you're going to dribble around them and score 20 times.
Right.
So I progressively moved backwards as I got older. So
Mm.
a young kid, and I would say up until I was 12 or whatever, I played up front,
Hmm.
center forward, right forward, center mid maybe, but certainly more attacking than anything else, right?
Yeah.
And then as I got to be like 13, and I moved to Austin at about 13 or so, and I started playing there. And those teams obviously don't exist anymore, like the Capitals.
Yeah.
So, but I went there and I started playing for a Round Rock based team, which is really like it was like with the Mazes where I went the Mazes and stuff. So it was like a second division travel team.
Hmm.
And then I played there like maybe one season and then moved up and played for like a first division team where we all went and tried out. Like half of our team went and tried out, right, for the
Yeah.
team. And I think I was the only one that made it out of the second maybe another one.
Yeah.
Second division team made it. And so that's when I started playing with the guys I ended up playing with throughout high school. And that was the Longhorns in Austin, a different
Hmm.
Longhorn team,
Yeah.
different club, right? But the
Right.
Longhorns down there, and they basically practiced out like in Hutto, like on a cornfield looking place. Um, but as a youth, yeah, I mean, I would say that you know taking a serious side of soccer, it probably didn't happen until I was like 13 because, like I said, I played every sport.
Yeah.
But I even played tennis in Dallas. I remember playing. I won the city championship playing singles. Um, Played singles at like 12, right? Probably 12 or 13 and under, something like that. My argument, I talk to people here all the time because I still coach the kids and stuff, and all of them specialize now
Hmm.
at like 8 years old. I'm
Yeah.
like, I would argue that playing playing flag touch football and tackle football with your buddies on the weekends when you're off out in the dirt and playing basketball nonstop and tennis and soccer and baseball, all of that stuff better prepared me to have some success in athletics, right?
Well, it does. So like when we lived in Ecuador, it was so entertaining for us to just like all the expats who were teaching at the school
Yeah,
to go and watch the kids during PE when they were playing like basketball because the kids grew up their whole lives they've played soccer.
right,
They have
right.
great first touch, like they understand the game, they've got speed, all of that. No hand-eye coordination.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. No,
like
it's the
so like
funniest thing
this
ever.
the senior game of basketball, like your oldest kids like playing seniors versus seniors or seniors versus juniors or whatever, right? They're playing it at halftime. It's 2 to like nothing.
It is interesting. I remember we went to even in college. We're playing. Those guys had never played another sport, and some of them, they played in PE, like in their own PE. They played
Right.
rugby and stuff like that in the other countries. But it was hilarious. We go out there and play like basketball, like screwing around, like the Swedish guys. It was the fun. I mean, it was like asking me to do a handstand and play ping pong. Like,
There's nothing funnier than watching people who are incredible athletes
oh yeah,
play a completely different sport.
yeah.
It just becomes
No, but
entertainment.
it was literally never seen, never touched it before, kind of thing.
Right.
Like I said, I'm telling you, it was like do a handstand, play ping pong. How awkward you would look. That's what
Mhm.
they look like playing basketball.
Right.
Couldn't dribble, and it was funny. It's so awkward that the fastest guy on your team in soccer couldn't even run on the basketball court because they
Yeah.
were just tripping over the ball, and it was just It was so fun, to do
Uh,
that.
what got you to Lynn, like, out in Boca Raton? Like, that
S So I played on a team once I started playing in Austin, right? So I played with um, the two big clubs I would say in that area back then. There was a bunch of them that were, obviously in the league, but not up to that level. I would say back then.
Right.
But when I played for the Longhorns team, who got really good uh, in my age group, probably like 15, 16, 17s. We won a few because Texas is based in. It's broken up into two categories. Back then, it was North Texas was a whole state, right?
Mhm.
Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, think how big that area is, all the way out east to Tyler's and all that street Longviews, all the way out west to the Panhandle was
Yeah.
all North Texas, and it came down to probably let's call it Waco area, right?
Right.
Was all North Texas, and that was a state division. So when you played state cup, you played all those 100 teams in the North Texas, and then when you went south, it was Austin, San Antonio, Houston.
Mhm.
Okay, we're all South Texas, a different state championship.
Yeah.
So we won a few times playing for the Longhorns, which was a great. I mean, that was the highest you could go, right?
Right.
Um, Against we play like the Houston Texans, we play teams from San Antonio, whatever, and get in the finals. And so that team was really good, and ended up having a bunch of future college players on it, right?
Yeah.
A bunch. But as we got to be about six, so we had a really good coach there for a few years, and then I don't know if he moved on or whatever, but at about 17, we all moved on and went to the Flyers,
Mhm.
which was a club that was based in Austin. Um, because we were kind of combining with another team as people were getting older, right?
Right.
And so the Capitals was the big team in Austin, kind of based in around Zilker area, right? Westlake, and they had a bunch of. They were always really good, but we were based kind of more northern, right? The
Mhm.
Longhorn team, and then Flyers were kind of central Austin, but it had like people from all the way up to like Temple, Belton
Mhm.
played on that team, all the way down to San Antonio. People played on that team, so it
Yeah.
was truly like a mixture of like a really good team. We had like an Argentinian coach, and we had English coaches, English Irish kind of coaches up until that point. Um,
Mhm.
and then we had an Argentinian coach there, and we did really well. And we may have won another state championship. We started traveling around, and um, we were pretty good. And we came to Florida and played. They used to call it like the Sun Bowl. I think it was based in Tampa. And there was
Mhm.
also one called the Cocoa Expo, which
Mhm.
was in Cocoa Beach. And these were like the big tournaments. You go there and there'd be in your division there'd be 40, 20, 30 teams, whatever, just
Mhm.
in your age group, and they're from everywhere.
Right.
Michigan, Tennessee, Jersey, Pennsylvania, right? Florida, wherever, California, all over the place. So I ended up going there and playing a little bit, and I started getting kind of a little bit of idea about playing soccer going forward at that age. But I would say even before that, remember, I know you asked me earlier about high school. I never played high school soccer until my senior year. So it overlaps. So soccer in Texas for high schools, you couldn't play both. They had like a weird regulation
Yeah.
where you really couldn't play both, and or it was really frowned upon because the season was basically in the spring. It wasn't like it basically started somewhere like in February
Mhm.
and ran until like April. You know what I mean? So it was basically in the travel season.
Right.
And so we played. We decided to play 1 year, and we had a pretty good team at Round Rock that year. And we ended up losing in probably like the regional final to a team that had half of my other club team on it
Right.
out of San Antonio. And the rest of and the only reason we did it is like, hey, we're seniors. Let's do it one time. And we had so many players from my team and the team below me in age that all played for the Longhorns and Flyers. I'm like, we can have a great team, right?
Yeah.
And not even all of them played. Some of them decided not to, and they just played travel. We would have been
Yeah.
even better, and we didn't. Some of them decided against it and kept playing for the Capitals, Flyers, or whoever.
Yeah.
Um, but we had, but it was also familiarity, right? It was the same players we played with all the time,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of, like you said earlier, there's a lot of bad teams.
Yeah.
When you're playing on a team which is full travel players,
Especially in high school, because 'cause they're
and
not
you go
usually
play
not travel
Crockett,
players.
we'd
Yeah.
go play Crockett, right?
Which is my alma mater.
Right, but we would go play them.
Mhm.
Dude, we're hanging 12.
Yeah. Dude,
Okay.
I watched when I was there,
And I would score 4, you know?
I watched our team lose to Westlake like 18-0.
Right, okay, right. So we would
Yeah,
go and play and just smash a team like that for 10,
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
That was the only time we ever played high school, and then, um, but, from the going across and playing in college, there really aren't. I mean, even today, there's really not college soccer teams in Texas
No,
for
a
men.
lot of them have
For
got
men.
rid of the programs.
Well, no, even for men. For
That's what
for
I mean for
females,
men, yeah.
female soccer didn't exist back then for the college side in the Big 12. But so you basically your choices in Texas were kind of like SMU, which was truly a top 10 program in Division One. And we had players that went there like over the years that I knew of. Or people went far because you had to
Yeah,
play like Division 3, like
yeah,
St. Edwards or St. Mary's, or those kind of places.
mhm,
Or people went far away. Like on my team, we had a guy that we had someone went to like St. Louis and played. Um, and even like someone like Clint Dibsey, who's younger than me, right? But remember, he played like at Furman or something in South
yeah,
Carolina,
yeah,
and he's from Nacogdoches, Texas.
yeah, which yeah,
How do you get to Furman? You know what I mean? It's just such a. But there's really no other options in the state, so everyone leaves. That was any good.
yeah,
The Capitals had guys that played at uh, like Creighton and places like that. Good
mhm,
soccer teams,
yeah,
But it was one of those things where it came up, and so I had traveled and played in tournaments in Florida a couple times, and started getting back then. This is no internet, no nothing. It was more like people just come up and talk to you and ask you questions, like, "Hey,
right.
you get you."
They're actually scouting you
They're
in
actually
person.
people watching the game, no
Mhm,
video, no nothing, right? And so and since remember, Dad lived in Florida at the time, and after one of the tournaments, the coach had gone. I think Dad may have actually called around and said, "Hey, the team from Texas is coming, and you should come out and watch him," kind of thing. And or maybe you got the list of coaches that were going to the tournament, maybe,
right,
but it was all manual back then, right?
yeah,
And and they came and watched either at Tampa or at Cocoa Beach, probably at Tampa. And there was several coaches that I remember talking to us like afterwards, and then I went and visited the school the same trip. So I left from there and went to visit Dad.
mhm,
You were probably there, you know what I mean? But I
yeah,
went and
it may have
visited.
been.
Yeah, exactly. You were just little. Um, and then I went and played at 2 universities and trained with them. This was like in the spring,
Mhm,
right? It was probably in off season, and I went and did a visit to the school and actually trained and practiced with them for a session, and
yeah,
it was an eye opener. Let me tell you.
yeah,
But it was like they put you through it and like make you do drills but actually go out and play to see if I can handle it. And they would knock you around and smack you. I mean, these guys were like 20 something,
yeah,
and I was like 16,
yeah,
17. They were smashing me,
yeah,
and I was probably 17, and they um, but I remember the college coach. Our coach was really good. Um, he was, and the reason why I would say that they were so successful over the years, that team, and still are, different coach now, but one, they would go get international players, obviously,
yeah,
but he would also go and go, hey, I'm looking for a left winger, right? He didn't just get, hey, I've heard a guy is good, and try to figure out where to put him, right? No, no,
yeah,
he would find a holding midfielder, right? He would
right.
find a center back. He would find a
He
right winger. He would find a center forward that was a number 9, a big guy that could hold the ball up to
yeah,
play his style because he had a specific style he wanted to play. And so, whatever, maybe I fit into it, and he just needed to round out the team or whatever. But they ended up talking to me and getting my transcripts and all that kind of stuff, and I ended up going there the next year. Uh,
did you go on scholarship?
Yeah, so it was mostly academic, right? For
Yeah,
me, because those guys, I mean, they use them all up on the
international,
international guys, right?
yeah,
But I had a lot of academic money, which I had to. I mean, come on, who was paying for me to go to college?
right, yeah.
So, and
Oh,
I
no,
and I
I am well aware. I got the student debt to show
yeah, I
it.
noticed. Luckily I don't have any of that, but um, but no, it's like I had like grants and obviously
Mhm,
academic scholarships and things of that nature, right? And it kind of all works out to, well, it's like okay, I can stay at home and do nothing or go to work basically,
Right.
or whatever, and or go to. I had gotten into a bunch of. Initially, I was going to go to engineering school, or I was thinking of going to engineering school, and so I had applied at several of them, all over the place. So I got into different universities, like
Yeah.
engineering specific, like Washington, and like place I was thinking, oh, maybe I can go somewhere I can walk onto the soccer team, right, or try to walk on, and
Yeah.
that was like the idea early on. St. Louis, where I had a player older than me, a year older than me, from my club that went there and played. And I remember talking to him saying, "Man, you should come. If you can make it work, come out. I think you can make the team. That kind of thing."
Yeah.
And
Did you ever have any, thoughts of any sort of professional levels of it? Or
no,
was
the moment I got to school, I realized right away
Yeah.
that I was going pro in something else. Right,
Right.
like it was, other people have, the
You were
dreams
good
or
enough for
whatever.
college, but not good enough for beyond.
Yeah, but even then, I go to a team that was like a top five team.
Yeah.
So I was good enough to be a role player at best, right?
Yeah.
Like where I'm like, you're riding the bench a lot and all that kind of stuff. So it was really like I was like, I can come here. I enjoyed it. I liked the small. We weren't really. I was certainly more a small town mentality, and I went to a small college, so
Mhm.
that really helped out, like the comfortability of it, and I liked it. I liked the coach. I liked the team. So it really wasn't. It was really more about, hey, I like it. I can contribute where I can, and that was it. And I'm just going to basically try to be the best student I can be. Right. I mean, that was
Right.
it.
Right.
But I would still go back, and we would train in the summer. We'd come home in the summer, and I would go and play like in the open leagues,
Mhm.
with all the like the non English speaking, like like the Mexican leagues that playing at
Yeah.
Zilker and stuff, and the open, and they're just killing each other. And half those guys are like, they're great. Some
Yeah.
of them are great. Um, I even went and trained, um, with. They used to have a team there called the Lone Stars, I think.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, and some of those players were, ex travel players, a little older
Yeah.
than me, right? And I
Yeah.
even went to a couple practices, with those guys, not with the coaches, but just them coming out and doing, like, because they were guys we knew, they were older than us.
Yeah.
We would go and play and do like trainings and shooting on their goalies and stuff. So it was like you try to do as much as you can to stay in shape while you're still working summer jobs and working out at the gym. And
Yeah.
I used to go work at, with the mazes and do stuff. And most of the time I would just go to the gym and work out and try
Yeah.
to do the best you can. But I just knew that I was like, okay, I can go back. I can keep showing up and try to get a little better, try to get a little better. My first year, I was like, I would call it lost, right, on the field.
Mhm.
Um, and I got injured a little bit. I broke my foot at one point in my second or third year. Um, but you probably saw me in maybe my second year. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would say that you asked me earlier about, playing. I progressively moved backwards. So by the time I was like playing under 18 or so, I was playing defender, and I was really
Mhm.
playing center back.
Yeah.
So we played like a 4-4-2, and the guy next to me, who also was a college guy, ended up playing college. He may have ended up playing a little bit professionally too, like in one of the NASLs or one of those.
Mhm.
But he ended up going to Miami and playing off of my
Yeah.
team, and him and I played side by side on that team. And so when I went to college, it was like another defender, but my coach played a 3-5-2 or
Okay,
three four
yeah.
three.
So,
So we
1
played
center
three in
back.
the back,
Yeah.
and our center back was great. Played pro for a number of years and stuff. He's an English guy. Our left back was a left footer, right? It was like totally, like I say, built. So I played right defender or
Mhm.
center or maybe some in the mid, wherever they could fit me in here and there. But it was, I moved backwards progressively, and it was kind of funny. Um, I've never really figured out, obviously forwards are, have skill sets, can shoot, have some explosive nature to them, right? Speed,
Mhm.
but you know, they obviously don't like to defend either, right? So I
Right.
must have had some sort of capability to do so at an age, and the coaches kept moving me backwards and backwards and backwards. And at some point, I ended up being just like we'll call it like a shutdown defender, like
Mhm.
center back. And I was good in the air. I was always very good in the air.
Yeah.
I was into, like, I was not little for the game, right?
Yeah.
I could run, I could jump. I was probably the biggest jumper we had. So I was good in the air. I could play with my feet. I could distribute the ball. I was, smart, as far as for the game. I understood it, and I could play both. I play left footed, right footed. So I would
Yeah.
play left back too, sometimes left defender. So it was. I think it just all that stuff kind of helps you get to a certain spot, right? But I
Now,
knew that as soon as I got there, and I mean these guys were guys that some of the guys on my team in college they were on the FIFA game. If you played FIFA, the video
yeah,
game back then, you could pick them and play. They were on the
that's
game.
that's crazy.
Right. That's how ridiculous some of these international teams were like that.
Yeah,
Like you're going, they were, I mean, I was a freshman. I was 18 and a half.
yeah,
They were freshmen. They were 24,
right.
23, Ryan. I'm 18 and
Yeah,
American. They've
yeah,
been playing pro, semi
yeah.
pro, or whatever they call it there
Since they were
for
15.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
it
they
was
also
ridiculous.
like we were talking about the leagues earlier and how like leagues for soccer internationally are different than any sports leagues here in the United States. The other difference that they have is they don't have like club teams or rec leagues or travel teams or whatever. No, like every professional team has its own academy where the kids go to that like after school every day their entire life as long as they're good enough to stay in the academy. And then that's where the
Yeah.
professional teams pull their kids from. They don't
Yeah.
draft players. They literally just like, no, this 16-year-old's been training with us since he was 8.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He
And then
knows
some of
our
them get
system, he
bought
knows our
by other
coaches, he
teams.
knows our players, and then they put
Right.
them in. So when you got international kids who are 24, they definitely played somewhere in the world for an
Oh,
academy.
oh,
And
not definitely. Dude, they
yeah,
were on the FIFA game.
yeah, I know that's insane to me.
Not even
That's
a
awesome.
question.
That's
It used
awesome.
to be a joke because there's one guy who played for Malmo, I think,
Hmm.
which is the same team that like Ibrahimovic grew up at, right?
Yeah, in
So like,
Switzerland. Yeah,
no, Sweden.
Sweden
So we had
City.
a guy play. He was on the game, and you're like, "This is the funniest thing ever." And we used to tease him because, like, dude, you suck because you get that team and you put it because you can sub him in.
He could pull
Because
his cards.
no, you would
Like,
know you would sub him in to
yeah,
make sure he was playing.
yeah,
It was fun,
yeah,
And he was terrible because he was like a reserve player on the second division Swedish team.
yeah,
But the reality was he was probably a 20-year-old,
yeah,
and those guys, they probably they see the writing on the wall too, right? They're good enough to get to that point. Maybe they get injured, maybe they have some issues,
yeah,
and they're like they can get a full scholarship and go basically on vacation holiday for
right,
4 years in America
yeah,
at 20 years old and be fine because they know they're not going to make it, right? They
right.
understood at an early age or whatever, and that's what happened. But we had
And
several guys that were just great. I
and still
mean,
find success. Did like I know in its history, Lynn University's won a few national championships. Were you there during one of them?
so we lost. No. So we lost in the finals.
Uh huh.
My maybe junior year,
Yeah.
or maybe senior year. So we were really good. We were probably 21-1 or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And we end up losing in the championship game to a team that's now D1. They were Cal State
Yeah.
back then, Bakersfield, I think, and now they're a D1 team because it was like 20,000 students. It
Yeah.
was like playing against like Texas State or somebody.
Right.
But it was a California team, and we lost 1-0 in that game. We had beat we were the number 1-2 team probably, and we beat the number 1 team who was undefeated in the semifinals. And we're like, oh, we got this thing in the bag, and we end up losing in the finals. To your point, remember like a 1-0 game
Right.
where you go, listen, that team could just hold on
Hmm.
and get a counterattack, right? And that's what happened.
Yep.
Everyone's deserving to be there at that age. At
What
that
year
point.
did you graduate?
College 98, 98, 99.
Oh, okay.
So
Because I
98.
remember I remember pulling it up because I was unsure, and I think Lynn won a Division II national championship, like I guess a couple
Oh, they
years
won it like
after
the
you
year I
graduated.
left. The
Yeah.
next year they won it.
Yeah.
They've probably won 3 since I was there.
Yeah.
They won 1 or 2 before I was there.
Yeah.
Like they probably won it in like 92.
So what you're saying is you're the problem.
Absolutely. Weak link. We'll call that the weak link. Um, but dude, I mean, there's 100 teams. Winning the
Yeah.
championship is
Oh, yeah.
very difficult. It's
Oh,
difficult.
absolutely
And
it is.
realize when you get to that all the good teams are basically playing. It's like a World Cup because
Mhm.
everyone's international, right?
Yeah.
When you go and play a team that has a decent record, and they're from pick any ridiculous spot, West Virginia or something. You're like, how is Charleston, West Virginia going to be any good? And you go and see it. They got 9 Germans,
Yeah.
5 Israelis,
Yeah.
2 Swedish, and 4 English guys.
Yeah.
No Americans.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I get it. They're us. They're
Yeah.
us. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And so you'd go and face those teams, and they were great, right? But yeah, they they had guys that went on to be coaches and professional players. One of the guys, some of them go back home, right, and play a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we had like Norwegians,
Yeah.
Swedish guys, English guys. Most of the South Africans stay. They didn't go back to South Africa. They end up. I mean, I'm sure some of them did. But a lot of them moved over to England, or they,
Yeah.
they may have, got married over here.
Yeah.
Met someone in college or something.
I mean, that's what you did. That's why you're still in Florida. I mean, you.
Yeah, it's no different, right? I mean, they
Yeah.
were kids. I mean, I would say, our coach used to call us young men. He's like, "You're not kids. You're young men. Like you act like a man, right? Don't do stupid things." But the reality is, we were all kids.
Yeah.
I considered after like my freshman year or so to come back and like try to go play at like St. Edward's or something just in Austin.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things. It was like, because I wasn't, you get discouraged. You can get discouraged. It weighs on you. Like when you play every second of every game for your whole life, right? Then you
Yeah.
get to college and you realize that, oh my God, I'm the 4th worst player on this field,
Right.
on this team. So it was like, you kind of, I'd say that's where it comes in that I had a level of intelligence that at least I knew that was the case, and I could stay and play and try my best and contribute where I can. And that was it,
And a lack of an ego that would
exactly.
make
Like
it
some
detrimental.
guys, there were guys that came 1 year and were gone, right?
Yeah.
Some of them transferred a couple times where they would come play there. They were all state or whatever, they come play there. Could have played a lot, could have played not that much, but didn't hit their ego right. So they would like transfer out, and we would see them playing, a year later or something at another team that we would face against.
Yeah.
And I'm like, good luck to you today, because now we're playing them, and they're like a team that was lesser, a lesser
Right.
team than us.
Right.
But yeah, I played as a kid. I played basketball in high school up until my junior year, and in my head, when I was probably a sophomore, I was like, "That's my game.
Hmm.
That's my sport." Of course, when I was a sophomore, I still thought I was going to be Dad's height,
Yeah.
and our Dad was always so honest with me, and he would be like, "Yeah, I was this height in like 8th grade." And I
Hmm.
was like, 5'6" or something,
Right.
He's like, no, it's not going to happen. I'm like, no, I'm gonna, you know, I'm long and I'm lanky, and my bones hurt, my joints hurt because I was growing so fast at a certain age, 13, 14, whatever.
Right.
That I always thought 6'3", man, that's
Yeah.
where I'm going to get to. And then I was like, nope, sorry, bro.
Yeah.
So
Not gonna
I blame
happen.
mom. I blame mom for all this because, you know, dad cannot be that height and have 4 sons and nobody be 7 foot from just randomly,
Right. Right.
Everybody's like 6 foot and under, It's like, what, how is nobody 6'5"?
Yeah.
But then yeah, I have friends of mine I grew up with that both their parents are short, but yet they're 6'2".
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. So I was like, Mom, if you were just 5'5", 5'4",
Yeah,
if you were still below average height for a woman, I didn't ask you to be tall, just below average height for a woman, I would be fine with it, and I'd be 6'2".
Then you graduate, you stay in Florida, get married, you have 2 daughters. They play, you coach their
That's
teams.
right. To the point that this year, Reese requested not to be on my team. So, which I took as, what did I do wrong, right? But I mean, granted, I mean, she's never played on a team that I didn't coach.
Right.
So I get it. And like every parent I tell that, or other coaches I coach with, they all laugh. They're like, I don't know if I would have allowed that. They're all like, no way.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened in my house. Because realize now we got to bring him to 2 different days of practices and stuff.
Right. Right.
2 different teams, same division. We have to play against them like 2 and 3 times this year. But I got it. I was like, she don't want to be on my team. But, coaching all those teams, and, it keeps you around the game, right?
Yeah.
It keeps you around it. It's fun, but it's
I mean, even
people get excited about it sometimes a little bit overexcited.
yeah,
But let's be honest, it's pretty low level, you know.
right. But
But
it's the
it's
game, it's
all
the
low
fun and
level. But
everything.
like
Yeah,
there's something to like them having when you have some kids who that get better, right?
yeah,
There's something to it,
yeah.
and it reminds you like when you were younger and you have like that player that has something
Mhm.
and they finally figure it out, right? They
Yep,
have some ability and they figure it out, and you're like,
yep,
oh my gosh, a year ago you tripped every time you tried to dribble, and now you're the best player we got, you know.
yep.
And it's kind of funny because there's a bunch of kids out there, right? But the sheer numbers of it is so much less than
Right,
it was in 1995.
right.
Like there would have been 1,000 kids in the division, right?
Yeah,
Now there's maybe like 600.
yeah.
But like again, specialization causes
Mhm.
it, right? You had kids who used to play soccer 2 seasons a year and then play baseball in the summer, right? Or
Right,
basketball in the winter. Well, now they're just playing basketball year round or
right,
baseball year round.
right.
So like you lose, and it's not like people think, oh, it's a couple. No, you lose hundreds to that.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Well, and it's just because like the specialization, it's a thing too that's pushed in the schools and stuff of like, especially here where, you said lacrosse is big there. Here, it's football and volleyball's big as well. And it's the whole if you're not touching a ball every day, you're not going to make the team because you got kids playing clubs and
Oh
whatnot
yeah,
in their youth. And by the time you get
year
to high
round.
school, you're not going to make the team if you're not doing something all the time. And so when they're younger, they still may play all the sports, but then they pick one and they stick to it.
Yeah, and the problem is, my argument would be that, and I make this argument to parents all the time because one, I would say I'm brutally honest to a fault a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
That's a family trait.
but no, but what I'm saying is like right away, like if you see someone who doesn't quite have like competitive instinct, for
Right.
example, right? And the parents usually see that too. Every once in a while they don't, and they think their kid's gonna be great, and it's hard to fault them for that because everyone wants the best for their kids. But um, I always tell everybody it's like puberty plus like 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you specialize in a sport at 10,
Hmm.
you actually have no idea what
Right.
your natural affinities might be
Hmm.
to any sport
Right. You
when
have
you're
no clue.
17,
Yeah.
16. You have no clue. Now, you growing up in Costa Rica, you're playing one sport regardless, right?
Yeah.
But you may end up being 6'3" and 250 pounds.
Right.
You're not going to be a very effective center midfielder. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you end up just not playing the game anymore except for fun. But if they were Americans, they probably would have played linebacker,
Right.
right? So it's one of those things where I always like, and my thing is more about the specialization. Where I'd rather see some kid be freaky in 5 sports
Hmm.
until they're 14 years old
Well,
than
and
to see someone specialize in lacrosse at 10.
you also get different things from different sports. Like you're not going to beat the cardio of soccer if as a child.
Yeah, or basketball, just the constant back and forth of
Yeah,
basketball. You know,
you need that draw.
yeah,
So, we're kind of at time here. Last question I have for you. Put you on the
yeah.
spot. World Cup prediction. Go.
Ooh,
Don't look at the groups. I barely even looked at them. I don't even care
ooh.
what they are. Just
I
give
say
me
the draw just happened. I'm trying to
get,
remember who didn't even make
it.
it.
It happened yesterday. Italy's not in it. Don't say Italy. Give me a team you think's gonna be good. Maybe a team who you think's gonna overperform. I'm just curious.
I would say the team who's going to underperform is always going to the team who's going to underperform. It's going to be England.
The team who's gonna underperform is the United States of America.
Oh no, I'm not even including them in this. I'm saying the people that think that England are going to be great because they've been pretty good the last couple,
Hmm.
I think they're going to underperform.
Okay.
Probably struggle against one of those teams in that group, which makes no sense, but they probably will.
The group is decent.
Well, the playing team is going to be the key. If that
Yeah.
playing team ends up being Scotland or
Wales.
Ukraine or something,
It's Scotland, Wales, or Ukraine. If it's
Right, but
Scotland or Wales, England's gonna struggle.
right. So I'm saying I don't see them. I mean, they should win every game, but I think that that they, people are thinking they're just going to the final. I
Mhm.
just see them bowing out in like the you know quarters or whatever,
Yeah.
and like underperforming a little bit. I think the team that may overperform, um, which is funny because they barely skirted in, is Portugal.
Yep.
So they may have the best lineup. It's ridiculous how many good players they have.
Yeah.
Um, so like I don't know how they barely got into the damn thing, to be honest, but they have enough experience and good players to be really good.
Mhm.
So I would not be surprised if all of a sudden you saw like Portugal in the semifinals or something after coming in on a playoff like they
Alright,
did.
who wins it? Not even knowing the groups, like, you can't even go through that
Who
we'll do that
wins it?
later, but I need to know who wins it. Give me a team. Just first instinct, your guess.
Oh God, Germany.
Okay. It's not a bad guess.
As a person who's just always just solid, right?
Yeah. They're just always a solid team. Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know. I looked at the groups. I watched the draw like just on YouTube, like I because it was a
Yeah.
replay and I just kind of watched the end of it. But I did not go in there and I didn't really pay attention to how they line up. Like where does bracket A play B or does A play C like in the next round?
It's A, B, C, D, E, F,
Is that
G,
how it works?
H.
I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if they like flip flop it and like do all
Mhm.
sorts of weird stuff.
No.
So I don't know where's America B.
B. So,
I think that America's going to have
America's gonna have a tough time.
they're gonna struggle mightily is what I would say. I just don't know. Oh shit! I just brought up the group. Spain and Germany are in the same group.
Yep.
Huh.
Oh, there are
Good luck
some
to
nasty groups.
whoever that play in is. New Zealand. They're going to play Spain and Germany. I
Mhm.
don't know what the group. There's always a group of death.
Yeah.
It might be the
S
Belgium group.
Yeah. It might be.
Belgium, Croatia, Canada, and Morocco.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see the group of death. There's always one. The U.S. group might be it. If it depends on who gets into that one.
If
There's
Ukraine
a
gets in, it might be the group of death. Ukraine's usually got a solid team, and with everything happening this year, they're gonna be like the love of the world team, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you play. So Wales is waiting for the winner of Ukraine and Scotland
Mhm.
to play in that playoff.
Yep.
I don't know. Wales. I mean, every team on this list has got world class players. I bet.
Mhm.
I
They
don't
do.
know.
Well,
Crazy.
man, thank you for doing this. It was fun. Plus, it was nice to actually hear and like figure out all those stories in my head of like,
Oh, I'm
what's
sure. I'm sure there's a
what's
million
true and
stories that
not
mom and
of
dad.
just your history though. I mean, like you said, when you were born, I mean, when I was born, you were 17 and like out of the house in like 2 years. So like, I don't really everything's secondhand. You know what I mean?
I was
Like,
like, well, I was maybe like 14 or 13 when you were born, right?
oh, I guess 14, 13, but still, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Brandon was like 17. That's what it was.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, having Brandon wasn't um, wasn't into sports, but he certainly was the older brother already playing those sports, and that's where it all started for us.
Yeah.
Because the parents signed people up.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
it's pretty fun.
All right, man.
All right,
Well,
buddy.
I appreciate it. And you have a good night.
Absolutely.
All
Talk
right.
to you later.
Bye, man.